Okay. Wonderful. All right. Okay, well, in that case, I will get started, and I will just to, continue to let people in if anyone else shows up. But first of all, thank you so much for being here this morning. I know it is a big chunk of time to dedicate to this, but it really helps us out and PVPC out as they do their research for this process. So thank you very much. So welcome to the Housing and Economic Development Focus Group. This will probably run until 1 o'clock. If it ends sooner, great. If not, I'll make sure to get you out by that time. And so the overall agenda is going to be as follows. I'll just kind of give everyone a moment to introduce themselves. I know at this point, this is the third focus group, and a lot of these familiar faces have been on them, so I don't want to waste too much time with that, but it is helpful for people who may not know your role as it relates to housing or economic development. And then we will move on to housing questions, and I will turn it over to Ted from PVPC at that time, and I might pop in with some questions at that time as well. And then Patty from PVPC is going to handle economic development questions. So, and then any questions that kind of overlap, I might chime in throughout as well. But I would encourage you also throughout the meeting, if you prefer, rather than speaking to answer a question, you can use the chat feature and throw any answers in there as we go along. We'll save it at the end and make sure that your feedback is saved there. Also, I am going to have the settings so that we're kind of muted by default, but if you raise your hand, we will, me or Ted or Ken or Fiona, I'll go ahead and make you a co-host as well, just in case someone happens to see before I do. We have several people able to help out with that, and Patty, you as well. So, let me give me just a moment to handle that. Okay, so, all right, so for meeting guidelines, I'm going to ask you to try and stay muted unless you're speaking. I know it's hard, but background noise and everything like that, it kind of just makes it a little tricky to follow along. Use that raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. And again, as I noted, feel free to use the chat if that is your preferred method. So, Patty, I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host as well. Just it's helpful to have as many of us as possible handling unmuting and whatnot. And if someone joins the waiting room, feel free to let them in. So with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen. We don't have a presentation or anything as part of this focus group. It's more just an opportunity for us to ask questions and have give you time to respond. So I will stop sharing. And I will give people just an opportunity from the staff side, from PVPC side, to introduce yourselves. I know that you've worked, with the committee, but just especially in relation to the chapter that you're working on, in case they don't remember your wonderful faces. So, Fiona, if you just want to say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Fiona Coffin from Barra Planning Group, working with PVPC on these focus groups. And we also did a lot of work on the visioning session. I'm looking forward to hearing what all of you have to say today. And if anyone has any questions for me, please let me know. And thank you again.
And Ken?
Thanks, Alexis and Fiona. Welcome, everyone, to our Economic and Development and Housing Focus Group. I think this is a great opportunity to talk to some of these components that are going to be in the master plan. I am a senior land use planner in the environment and land use section at PVPC. I'm also the co-project manager along with Catherine Rattay on this master plan. So Ted and Patty are will introduce themselves shortly, but they are going to be writing the housing and economic development chapter. I'm also at this time going to introduce or re-welcome Dunya Newf, who is participating as an observer from Agadir, Morocco. She has just finished her workday out there, so she's now going to be sitting on and observing here. And I look forward to speaking to Dunya with regards to some of the engagement and exchanges that we are learning from each other with regards to planning and community engagement. So either Ted or Patty, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'll jump in. Good to see everybody. I'm Ted Harvey. I'm a planner with the community development section at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. So I'm going to be focusing on the housing section for the master plan. So I have a bunch of questions. Excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
And I'm Patty Gambarini. I'm going to be working with you on the economic development chapter. And I'm kind of a oddball in taking on an economic development chapter in a master plan. But I've been thinking a lot and doing some research. Chesterfield has, had a lot of questions about local revenue and open space. And I felt like with Blanford, I work on the environment side of our section. I'm a section manager. And so have been, really want to have conversations around that in Blanford if open space is one of the potential building blocks for economic development. And I've been looking at what's happening nationally on that front. So I'm really interested to talk to you about that at some point if it doesn't come up today in our conversation.
Okay, thank you, Patty. I think that is everyone on our end. And I know, we've already had the pleasure of meeting all of you on the Blanford side, but just in terms of how, why you were invited as relates to these topics. So Edna, you're on the planning board, correct? Sorry.
I am on the planning board,
Mm-hmm.
vice chair,
Yes.
and I guess that's why I've got the distinct honor of being invited. And I look forward to the meeting. I think it's going to cover a lot of important information that we need.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And Edna, of course, is also on the RMPC as well. So thank you. And Margaret, I hope I am saying your name correctly. I have not had a chance to speak with you directly.
Yes, you are saying it correctly. Yes, I'm the director of the Council on Aging in Planford. In my interest in this, obviously, is the senior housing and how it ties in with transportation and everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say also, if, because it's such a small group and the topics definitely overlap. So if any thoughts come up as relating to transportation come up, feel free to share them with us as well during this meeting. That's fine. But specifically with regard to senior housing, that is absolutely, and I know Ted has some questions about that, but that is why we invited you here today as well to hear your thoughts on that. So thank you so much. And Joanne, I know you wear many hats. So we definitely wanted you here as well. I know you're co-chair of the RMPC. And yeah, so if you want to just say hello to everybody.
Hello, Joanne Martin, admin assistant to town administrator and board of selectmen. I'm here to take notes, or select board, I'm sorry, the name has changed. And I'm also the keeper of the locked front door, so I might disappear every now and then, but I will be back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Dr. Hobson, you also wear many hats in the community. I believe, if I recall correctly, one of the reasons you were suggested to join this group is in part with regard to housing. In your role as superintendent, you maybe have a lot of experience with kind of the needs of families and in Blandford, but then also for the economic development side, I know you are a farmer as well, correct?
Yes, and I also have worked with the 6 towns when they were 6 towns economic development unit and had an economic development advisor. now 4 towns. So I've been trying to work with trying to get things going in all 6 towns.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. So sounds like, oh, can people hear me okay? I am being told my internet connection is unstable. So please let me know if that continues. We seem to be having internet woes today. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Ted with housing questions at this time. And Ted, I'll chime in too if I have any follow-up questions or if any thoughts come in, Ken, for you with land use as well at any point throughout this, certainly kind of chime in as needed. So Ted, take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks. So like I mentioned, I have a ton of questions. I don't know if we'll, some are related and overlap, and I don't know if we'll get through all of them, and that's fine. We'll get to the main ones. And obviously if we go off on tangents that are related to housing and transportation, that's great too. But I just wanted to kind of follow up with what Margaret had said briefly about seniors. In our discussions and in my discussions with people in town and just the research we've done, that seems to come up over and over again. So I just wanted to bring that up as a topic, the importance of seniors and supporting seniors in Blanford. And then basically how can housing support seniors in Blanford? And that could be a whole host of different things, senior housing, aging in place, as just some broad examples. But I just want to throw it out to the group about what your thoughts were. And this is kind of a general, larger topic. We can break it down, but what your thoughts were on housing and seniors in Blanford. So if anyone has any, I mean, I think you're on, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Okay. What I'm hearing a lot of from seniors actually are they want to stay in the community. They have their friends here. Some have family, but for the most part, it's friends. But they're finding that their homes are older, need a lot of work and maintenance that they're just not able to keep up with. And they have mentioned to us that they would like to see affordable senior housing. And when they're talking about that, it's like downsizing. We're not talking about these massive senior, communities, condos, or anything like that. Our thought was just, maybe a small group of smaller homes that would be manageable for the seniors and affordable for the seniors.
So John Piper here. I just joined the meeting. Sorry I'm late. Margaret, where would you want to put that? How would you do it?
That's another topic that keeps coming up. I don't know. I know years ago when I was a collector in town, someone had approached the office about some property, I believe it was on Maple Lane, that would be available, and it's kind of centralized. I'm not sure if the town still owns that or what the situation is there. Some people have thrown out the idea of the Blandford Fairgrounds. I think anybody that would even try to do that would probably be run out of town. But those are just some ideas or suggestions that have come across to us.
So
So on the other end of that is, like I think it was Patty that had mentioned, the open space, which, I think that's wonderful, but the more open space you have, the less space you have for housing development.
John, did you have any follow? I know it's hard. I can't really like mute or unmute you because you're on the call, and I don't want to mess you up there. So do you have any other follow-up thoughts you wanted to ask Margaret about?
I would agree with Margaret that if you tried to do something with the fairgrounds, as far as Maple Street, I don't know how much land is available there. The Pike is right there. And that's on the downhill slope. Like when you get to the back of Watson Park, it's just marshy and wet. Again, it comes back to this perk thing. Now, there is Russell Waterworks, or not the Waterworks, Russell, I'm at a loss for the word, the water treatment plant runs right down next to the Pike. I know with talking with the head of Concom down there, they need more water for that unit, that building, to work properly. There was talk about trying to hook up into it. The rest areas at the Mass Pike are tied into it, and that's why it runs down that section. So that would be one possibility, is to be able to tie into that system. And at that point, you could put all the center of town in there. So you could have city sewer, which would be huge, which would eliminate trying to get it to perk and put in a septic system. But I don't know if it would be feasible on Maple Lane.
Okay.
I'm just being devil's advocate here, that's all.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I appreciate input, and I'm just putting out there what I'm hearing from seniors.
Yes, thank you, Margaret, for that, and John, for that background about the limitations of the land. These are all things that need to be navigated in the interest of, in order to kind of honor all of the needs of the community and exploring what's feasible. I'm going to go ahead and call on Dr. Hobson, if that's okay with you, Ted. I see his hand raised.
Yeah, and Dave is fine. It doesn't have to be Dr. Hobson. But I would agree with Margaret. I think a lot of us are in houses that are large, have a lot of maintenance. And I also agree with John, because I don't know, probably 10 or 15 years ago, the town was having some problem with failed septic systems, and was really looking at that point about putting in some sort of a community-wide sewer system, and with the potential of tying into Russell's. So I agree with John that if we were able to do something like that, it would certainly open up the opportunity to do some senior housing or clustered housing for seniors. I know the community survey wasn't strongly in favor of clustered housing, but I'm not sure that's not part of the problem. They don't really understand what clustered housing is. But for the people, and becoming the majority of people in Blanford are elderly, how do we keep those people in town who have had a historical tie-in with the town, have been part of the town's administrative structure for years, and provide enough infrastructure so that we can support them?
Margaret, can I just ask a quick, thank you, Dave. Can I ask a quick follow-up question about, in terms of the vision that seniors have kind of put forth about cluster housing being able to downsize into smaller homes? I think you had also mentioned, upkeep. So in this vision, is there any like a property management, like in the creation of this? So really like a 55 plus community, like that sort of thing where there'd be outside property management, or they just want homes kind of closer together? Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Speaking to the seniors.
Yep.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from them is they just want smaller homes.
Okay.
And actually one person I just spoke with recently said, just maybe 4 or 5 smaller homes grouped together. So, we have our neighbors and we don't have a lot of maintenance. My dream and vision has always been down the road, long after I'm gone, I'm sure, would be to have senior housing with several of those homes, and when I say several, I don't mean dozens, I'm saying maybe 7 or 8 around a senior center, and possibly have a community center, like even the library, a smaller version of the library there. So everything is right there, and it would be managed by, you know, a property manager.
Okay, thank you. Ted, I hope I didn't mean to take over that question. Just wanted to make sure I had those details. So carry on,
No,
Ted.
that was good. That was actually my follow-up, because I know Margaret had mentioned the kind of upkeep issues. Yeah, so that was definitely my follow-up there. So are there any other thoughts on this particular question? I saw that there's some stuff in the chat, the idea of condos. I think that was put in there, affordable condos, yeah. So I'm taking notes as we do this too. Are there any other thoughts on this? It sounds like there's a lot of potential and a lot of issues to work out in this particular setting, but it does seem like a very vital, important piece looking forward over the next 10 to 30 years, really. So just want to make sure there's room for any further comments on this. And this probably ties into a lot of the other stuff. I mean, I think senior housing or aging in place or seniors in the community is going to be part of this whole entire discussion. But for this particular question, are there any other thoughts?
I think Ted and Margaret suggested it in the conversation before you brought us full circle, is on the community survey, and I think to John's point with regards to Dave's point with regards to educating folks about either open space, residential design, subdivision. There was a question on the community survey regarding sort of a multifamily product similar to the town of Goshen, in which Hilltown CDC operates that, and it's right in the center of their town, with access to the senior center and the town hall. So I think flushing that out and that possibly having, according to the survey, there's a little bit of support with regards to that, but providing that as an idea, I think is a worthy one, especially as we explore additional ways to incorporate aging in place. But yeah, that's just a comment and an observation based on the community survey.
Okay, well, if there's anything else on this, obviously we can always circle back. So the next question I want to throw out there, and this is more of looking at the positives in Blandford. So what are the current strengths of housing in the town, whether they be cost, types of housing, lot sizes, what are the, if someone were to move there or if someone is living there, what are the current benefits and positives of housing in Blandford? So I'll throw that out there and see what people think. If there are any. Just kidding.
Well, if I could, I think the fact that we have minimum lot sizes has decreased the number of people moving into town and being able to build houses. We have a lot of large houses which are really underutilized. Just a couple live in it because they're retired and their kids have moved away. And the disadvantage to that, of course, is that if you're, as Joanne said, if you build a small house, you still have a large lot, and there's still a lot of maintenance to do, snow shoveling, snow plowing, and all the rest. So the whole idea of being able to look at certain areas in town, like a center of town, certainly doesn't have 2-acre minimum lots. But can we expand that somehow without overwhelming the town with a lot of people? And at what point, and I've said this right along as a superintendent, at what point do the people start aging out of town for one reason or another? And how do we bring young families into those houses rather than just retired couples? But we do have a lot of great houses in town and some historic places. It's a great town to live in, but at what point do we make it affordable and easy for seniors and affordable and easy for young families.
Thank you. And Ken, I think that I know you had a question about, not to jump ahead, and I don't want to lose the question, but I know you had a question about changes needed to refine and modernize towns' policies and regulations, especially with regard to housing. So, Dave, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like that minimum lot size is perhaps a detriment in terms of enabling people to come in and build homes. I'm hearing you correctly on that?
Yes, and it's also, it ties in with taxes from a real estate perspective. So if you own, 1,000 feet of frontage, that's 3 house lots. But if you move that down from 300 feet to 100 feet, that becomes 10 house lots. And potentially, if you don't have your land in some kind of chapter designation, you could be paying for 10 house lots for value rather than 3. So there's a lot of different things tied in together, but certainly a 300-foot frontage and 2-acre minimum lot does restrict the ability for people to build small houses on smaller lots.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think, Edna, you had your hand up.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The planning board is actually looking at doing a survey or something to try and look at the lot sizes and the frontage that we require now. That was done in 1965, and I don't think it's been updated since, and is causing problems for people that have larger lots and like Dave said, can't keep them up. So that is something that we're looking at. I'm not sure how to proceed on that, but we definitely think it should be on the books. The other thing was related to the seniors. We had some time ago talked about even having services in a building here in town, maybe not that are there 24/7, but that would be able to come in and do services for seniors. I know the Council on Aging has done a lot of that, but even things like hairdressers or eyes or, that sort of thing. We really don't have the ability for that. And within walking distance for some of these people that can't drive and whatnot, it would be nice if we could consider something like that for the seniors. But definitely rezoning the lot size, I think, should be a priority at this point. But I'm only one. So
Thank you.
that's all I got.
So John Piper again. So in theory, that's a great idea. But if you're going to bring in a business, you have to there has to be enough people to go to the business so that they can survive. And I don't know that that's possible.
Thank you. That actually, it's an example of a perfect question that will kind of, I think Patty, I'm sure will kind of move into questions relating to that in the economic development, but it shows exactly how these all connect and tie in. So Patty, I hope that let's table that question and address that concern a little bit later. Thank you, John.
Okay, so if there are any other thoughts on the strengths, weaknesses, we've kind of covered both of that in this part of the conversation for housing. So anybody else want to add anything to those? We've kind of covered some of the weaknesses. I do want to, I'll let, if anyone has any other thoughts on that, great. But I just wanted to make a point on Dave's discussion about families leaving or the idea of trying to work and bring families back in. If there's any other, I'd love to get other comments on that, particularly regarding housing. You know, are there thoughts on, it sounds like an issue, and Dave's not the first person I've heard mention that. And so it's kind of a two-pronged thing. We got seniors on one hand and families not coming in on the other. So I'm just curious, again, as much as related to housing as possible, what people's thoughts are on ways or ideas of, you know, is that an issue, number one, and then also number two, ways that that the town could look at encouraging families to come into town, to live in town, or to not move out. I guess we could also do that. Yeah, Margaret.
One of the things that keeps coming to mind with me, and I don't know where or what related to this any longer, but allowing people to have an in-law apartment. So if you have a young family, for example, that would love to move up here, but would love to have mom and dad live with them as well in an in-law apartment, I don't know what the drawbacks to that are any longer. You know, if there are still restrictions, and I'm not saying like a duplex home, I'm saying an in-law apartment over a garage, for example, or a finished basement. And I think that might help some families anyways. And again, that's just a thought.
No, that is a great thought, because I think there are people who, when they are deciding to where to live long term, and they're thinking of their parents and thinking of, you know, people do look to communities where they are allowed to have some sort of accessory dwelling, either within their home or adjacent to their home. So that's actually very helpful. Edna.
Hi, we do have in-law apartments. They are allowed in the town, and in duplexes, 1 or 2 families are allowed in the town. There isn't any restriction on those.
Okay, great.
If I may, I know that there was a conversation about, I think it was from Bob Kidd, maybe, with regards to cottage industries and home occupations. I mean, the ability to do work if you are working from home, selling any sort of light manufacturing product, depending on the zoning bylaw, what would allow those types of uses. I know that there has been discussion, at least in committee, and even in the community survey, to encourage that, and that probably will tie into some of the conversation that Patty is, you know, may be exploring with regards to economic development. But I think, you know, if you think about that with housing, I think that you know, it's an observation that both the committee and the community survey has identified as probably something to explore, and even maybe advertise that's an option.
Okay, any other thoughts on this question of families, either encouraging families to come in or not to leave? Again, this ties into a lot of different aspects, housing just being one of them, but if there are any more thoughts from anybody?
Absolutely. Edna?
Yeah, and
I know this is going to cause problems, but one of the biggest, or 2 of the biggest stumbling blocks that I found for young families moving into town is, frankly, the fact that we won't open up the turnpike. That's a problem for young people. If they're working, they really need to be able to Route 23 hasn't been improved in 50 years at least. And it's a terrible road to drive for people getting back and forth. It's just not the best, especially when we have accessibility, the turnpike. That also brings in families from summer homes, for summer home families from New York and whatnot. We used to have a lot of them in the town, which brought in a lot of revenue, and we're very good residents. The other thing is the lack, and I know there's nothing we can do about it, but the lack of school for elementary school just stops a lot of families from moving up here. It's really tough to have their kids bused for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour each way when they're in elementary school.
Mm.
And I know there's nothing we can do about it, but it's just out there for families. Thank you.
Thanks, Edna.
So I want to be conscious of the time, make sure we get to have time for economic development. And I know we go to 1, is that right, Alexis?
Yes. It seems
Okay.
though that these topics are kind of, I hope Patty is also benefiting from the things you've heard so far, because there's
Yeah, okay.
definitely this overlap. But yeah, so I would say as long as we move on by probably like 12:20, that should be okay.
Okay.
Because I rambled a lot at the beginning.
Great. No, that's good. We're covering a lot of good stuff here. And obviously, as Alexis was saying, a lot of this stuff is overlapping anyway. And the school issue, and I've definitely, I've talked with a few folks about that. And we've basically said what you've said, that, there's, it's there, but it's nothing we can do about it right now. So it's just kind of something that's out there. So these are kind of broad questions, and I don't. When people do move to Blanford, do people know where, why and where they're coming from? And then kind of in the reversal, when people are moving away, maybe the school is one reason, or maybe the aging issue is another. But are there where are they moving to, and why are they moving out? So we have two-pronged question here. So moving in, when people move in, where do you see them coming from, and what are the reasons they do come to Blanford? And then kind of the reversal of when people are moving out, why and where are they moving out to? Or you don't know?
Can you ask that question again, just briefly?
Sure. You know what? I'll do the first part first. So, when people move into town, where are they coming from? If you know, are they coming from like a Springfield or a Boston to kind of get out away from urban areas? They generally come from a similar town like Blanford, just for a new, more rural experience. And then, what are the reasons that you've heard that people are moving into town?
Exactly. Why are people coming into Blandford? And I kind of also, well, okay, yeah, let's just have people answer that. Joanne.
Speaking personally, I moved up here, lived next door to my daughter because we were retired, and we wanted to be near our family, which is great. But in the short, almost 8 years I've been here, I'm already thinking about, like I mentioned a little while ago in the notes, keeping up with my house. My husband is 10 years older than I am. And I've already started conversations with my daughter saying, I don't know that I will keep this house. Once, I don't want to say it out loud, but you know what I mean. But where would I go in town? Would I buy another house? Well, what's the point of that? So unless I could find something that was very small, I would have to move. I mean, I moved from Southampton, not very far away. I would have to go back to a bigger area, I guess. I don't know, to get into a condo or elderly housing or trailer park, God forbid. So that's where my thoughts have gone on all that. So I like the way Margaret is going on.
So I just want to clarify, Joanne, you actually moved in town because of family. Was that one of the main reasons?
Kind of,
Okay.
we were getting ready to downsize because we had such a large house, and my daughter was getting ready to find a place big enough for her horses. So it all worked out really well, and we followed her up here, and she purchased property, and we purchased a piece of her land, like Dr. Hobson, 300-foot frontage, which we don't need. She actually still uses a good part of our property for haying. So anyway, it's a lot of property.
Thank you.
Did I answer that? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just wanted to clarify that, but that's interesting. Yeah. And
The people that I know of recently that have moved are older. When their children are no longer in school, they seem to move up here for the quiet and the rural area and whatnot, and they move out of urban areas, more urban areas. Not too far usually. They're not long distance movers. They're from the Springfield, Holyoke, Southwick area, and they move up there for the property and for the rural environment, but their children are already educated, so that's what I've seen.
So, Edna, I wanted to come back to something you said in relation to what Ted is asking about, why people come and go. You had mentioned that there used to be, I believe you said used to be, and it's not the case anymore, that there used to be a lot of like New York summer families. That's changed?
Oh, absolutely. We used to have a great deal of New York people that lived here. Some of them even lived here during the year, and whoever the primary worker was stayed in New York or wherever for the work week and then came home. We don't have that anymore, and that's why we have a lot of big homes. I think they were originally from summer homes from the New York people, and if we had the turnpike entrance, that would help bring those people back. And there was a lot of revenue from them because we didn't use our water system only for the summer. And so we got a lot of good, I think. We didn't have to pay for them to go to school because they were summer folks. So they didn't have a lot of town cost, but they contributed greatly to the overall town.
Why do you think that changed?
It's hard. It's really hard to drive up here. If you've been on Route 23, it's not the best road in the winter, let me tell you.
Okay.
Can I jump in and ask one follow-on on that? Is what was it they came for, do you think? Like, what did they do when they...
It was a summer home. It was rural. It had wonderful air and clean water and mountains, and they could go golfing, play tennis. There was a lot here. We had country club. We had a lot to bring in the summer folks, I think. And we had a lot more cottage industry at that time too.
So if I could, I think there's also another reason, at that point, and that was back in the 50s and 60s, we had a lot of people have summer homes and kept them. As they aged out, people who now have second homes aren't looking for just a rural environment. They're looking for a lakeside or mountainside, something that they can have activities. For whatever reason, people have become much more active than looking for a golf course and quiet, clear air. In terms of moving into towns, at least from young families who have kids in school and we've tracked, a lot of them come out here from Westfield, West Springfield, Springfield, Holyoke, because the housing is generally a little less expensive. The school systems are generally better, have smaller classes. And the same reason, in reverse, people often leave as their students get older because they're looking for a larger school system with more options for their high school students.
Mm.
So it's really a catch-22 in that respect.
Can
And that has changed dramatically as we've seen more and more students enroll online in different types of schools.
Can I just follow quickly up on that? Dave, have you've noticed that specifically that, you know, when students hit, you know, junior high or high school, those families are leaving? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, that's our biggest drop in enrollment is from the middle school to the high school. And again, it's because there's not a lot of offerings that we have in a high school of less than 200 students.
Interesting. Thanks.
Huh, that is interesting. Okay. Ted, sorry, I was just going to say if you had any other questions that you really wanted to ask before I turn it over to Patty.
No, I mean, the only other thing was and it's been kind of touched on about why people are leaving. It sounds, from what I'm hearing, it's a whole host of reasons. The school and education is a big piece of it. Also, even seniors that don't have the accessibility options. But if there's any other thoughts or ideas or what people see about people leaving Blandford, and then where are they going? Do they tend to go? Like Joanne mentioned, that, you know, considering larger area or larger urban areas so that they have the resources. So any final thoughts on that, and then we can jump into the economic stuff.
As we track families who leave from the district with follow-up surveys, a lot of families are leaving to chase a job. There used to be a lot of jobs in the area, Strathmore Mills and things, and that's caused some disruption. But as we move forward and you get larger manufacturers closing even within an hour or a half hour to an hour and a half, people are just deciding that it's easier to move than, as Edna says, drive down 23 and try to catch a connector to go to Boston, because we do have people that work in far distance in Boston and Albany. And I actually have people that come in to work at Gateway that come from Albany. But that becomes more and more difficult as you have young children. I mean, it's one thing if you're retired or you don't have kids, but there's just not a lot of jobs in the area.
Okay. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we can switch over to more specific economic development questions.
Yeah, and that's actually Dave's comments are actually kind of a perfect segue into that about the jobs and the lack thereof and why families may be leaving. You know, it's kind of regional shifts are going to kind of facilitate changes, you know, for better or worse, and kind of how do we respond to that? So, Patty.
Great. Thank you, Alexis. Yeah, there was a lot in that housing conversation that definitely ties into economic development. And, you know, I feel like so many of these categories are overlapping. So I'm going to jump into a series of questions that I think are the most essential, because we have a long list. We have like 10. So I'm going to try to get to maybe like 5 if we have enough time. The first question is, what services do you consider most important for you and others to be able to attain locally?
I'll start just because, you know, there's really no services that are local. Our general store is only open intermittently. It's hard to tell when it's open, when it's not open. So people tend to pick up the quick things as they're coming home from work. And most of our people do work out of town. The closest medical services are in Huntington with the HCHC. So other than traditional services in the town, you know, you have to go to the dump, get some town services in terms of getting your roads plowed and your kids sent to school. There's not a lot of services in town. And up until the last few months, when we have some great hope about getting broadband in town, You had to go someplace to work because you couldn't work from home. Our broadband, our internet just was not fast enough to do that, which we saw as a huge issue when we went remote in schools, where I had to pick up 80 hotspots so the kids could actually connect and do their schoolwork.
Wow, yeah, that must have been a huge challenge.
Yeah, $80,000 worth of huge challenge.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But you know what services, and their services are different from people with young kids. You know, there used to be play groups and things in town, but we don't have a lot of young kids in town anymore. You don't have any real senior services. I mean, the senior center has done a great job, but we had a van, and you know, the Franklin County Regional Transit doesn't help a whole lot. So, you know, most of us don't go for services in town. There's just not as easier to go someplace else. Doesn't mean we shouldn't put them in or look at putting them in, but I don't think there's much available at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point on the services really depending on who you are, you know, young family, senior, professional. Okay. So is there anything, I mean, you mentioned the dump, the schools, broadband. Is there anything sort of you'd add to that list, not that you have currently, but that you see as really critical, maybe for all those levels or all those different populations in town?
So, John Piper again. So, in theory, I would agree with all those. It would be great, but you're starting to talk about you have to have enough people that will patronize a business or even a service that it has to be able to pay for itself and even make some profit. And I just don't know how that's going to happen. There's just not enough people here to make it doable.
Do you think people want that to change?
It doesn't matter if they do. Look at the general store. Most people, it's like they're too expensive. They're not going to go there. It's like, I can get it cheaper here. I gotta go. Like Dave said, I gotta go somewhere else to go to work. I'll pick it up in town. You never know if they're, you go, I'll pick it up at the store on the way home. It's like you get there, they're closed. It's like, dude, I'm not going back to town now to get. So you just don't bother going to the store because I never know if sometimes they don't even have it. You get in there, you go, yeah, milk delivery is not until Wednesday, and they're out on Sunday. So you don't take. I find myself, I don't take the chance that they might have milk. I'm passing several places on the way home. I'm just going to stop there because they always have it. Again, you have to make these things where they'll either pay for themselves or you get a little profitability. People have to go to these places and use the services. Otherwise, it's survival of the fittest. And if not enough people patronize these places or use services, how can they survive? It's the way capitalism works. You got to have enough people to go and do this, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So just a question on the general store. Is your sense that sort of there's this negative feedback loop that people aren't using it, so there's less available, and they're not stocking as much milk because the demand has been sort of dwindling, and prices are going up? It almost sounds like there's some of that going on. Do you have a sense, John?
If just from talking with Jen, if she ends up it's not a high volume place. And it's a small store, so they've got to be more expensive than Cumberland Farms or the supermarket. It's like, dude, it's the convenience of being able to go 5 minutes down the road instead of 25 minutes down the road. But when you end up by eating a gallon or two of milk a week, and that's just something that's I just used milk. I'm sure there's other things that will spoil if I don't sell them. It's kind of like a catch-22 where, dude, half the time I go there, they're all out of what I got or what I want, and you end up by going somewhere else and then I just stop going there. I mean, I still go there, but I do what I said. It's like, I don't know if the store will have it. And then they close, I think, at 4 o'clock. A lot of people, either they're not out of work or they're still on their ride home from work. They're not going to make it. They're going to be closed. So I'm just going to go stop somewhere else. And then I know I can get what I want. Jen would be better to answer.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to speak for her or put words in her mouth. She would know the real reasons. I think I see some of them, but
yeah, I'll follow up with her, definitely. So another question, Blanford has some important building blocks, and I would also say that maybe some of these building blocks might be beyond your borders. I think of Otis Reservoir and I see just like the line of traffic going there through Blanford in the summer. So just trying to think about, like, what are some of the building blocks that you feel are worthwhile, and, you know, that there's some way to work with them in order to build, you know, a stronger rural economy in Blanford.
Well, I think you've probably hit on a very common problem that we have, and that is we're really dependent, the story is even dependent upon people coming and going to Otis Reservoir, other things. And at one point, we had a fairly decent golf course, and Blanford Ski Area is open, and we would have had to build on those as tourist attractions, which would have, again, provided opportunities for general store to pick up traffic and maybe some other things in town. But with the ski area closing down and the golf course being privately owned and not as large a draw as it used to be, you know, what other kinds of activities do we have in town that we can build on to attract tourists? And that's really what's going on in all 6 towns. The towns who are like Otis, who have a reservoir and a large cadre of summer people whom you tax not just their houses, but the contents of their houses, and they don't take many services, you can have a really low tax rate and have a huge tax revenue. Blanford needs to build on what we potentially had in the past, which was the ski area, the golf course, and there are other things that we can multiple use for those, and the fairgrounds. You know, the fair is really only Labor Day weekend. We don't do an awful lot with the fairgrounds the rest of the year, in part because it's just so expensive to get liability insurance and attract people to the fair can make a profit. As John says, if you can't make a profit, it's really not worth doing. And we have such a diverse array of people in town now that services that are specialized just can't make it economically in town. So for example, for 20 years ago, I used to be able to get tractor parts or a tractor service in a half hour. Now it takes me 2 hours and I have to drive to New York. But it's certainly not worth anybody to open up a tractor place anywhere nearby. There's just no farms left anymore.
Oh,
John Piper again. Blanford is not a destination. It's a bedroom community. Most of the business that we do get are people, like Dave said, on the way to Otis, on the way to the ski area, on the way to the golf course. There's no reason to come here, which is why I think a lot of the people live here. There's nothing here. They want to live in the woods. And that's what they like about it. You start talking about growth, and nobody wants to see growth when you talk to other townspeople. They just want it just the way it is. They don't want to change anything.
Ghost towns are fun too.
Ghost towns.
So
Can I just follow up? I didn't realize I was on mute, and I was trying to follow up on Dave's mention of farms. And I wanted to ask you about like the farms that are remaining, whether you think that's a potential building block, because I saw in the survey a number of times the working farms being like something that people were really wanting to see, and feeling that that was a really important land use to be able to promote. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dave?
Most of the working farms are really hobby farms. There's not enough revenue on a farm, a small farm here in New England, to really make a lot of money unless you're doing some kind of specialty products, marijuana, for example, or some kind of dairy products that you have an actual processing plant there, like Highland out in Lenox. Or you, like Leon over in Granville, where he does, ski touring and hay and maple syrup and a lot of different things. But it's just very difficult because we don't have a market here. We don't have large enough producers to make it worthwhile to wholesale anything. So it's all got to be retail. And even there, myself, it's really leisure activities of people who want to board horses or have horses and need to buy hay. And with an aging population, it's harder and harder to get young kids that will help you put up hay. I used to put up 12,000 bales of hay all over town, and I'm 65 and I can't do that anymore.
The only thing the farms really grow around here is hay. I don't know, like Dave said, there's a couple family things. They might have a roadside vegetable stand, but I wouldn't call them a farm. I can't think of any crops other than grass that anybody grows here. I never see corn or anything. I don't see anything growing besides grass.
Okay.
Maple syrup.
Maple syrup, yeah. So are there places of that could serve as a good model? Do you have places that you really like, in terms of what they look like and what they feel like that might be a good fit for Blandford that you think, maybe the town could aim for?
That's a good question. I take Ripley's as another. They do a lot of marketing at farmers market, but they go all over the place. They go to Westfield and they go to Granville and they go wherever, because Blanford's just not large enough to be a market so that you can have a consistent opportunity to sell your goods. And as John says, we're not exactly the farming mega metropolis of New England. We have a lot of hills, a lot of rocks, a lot of trees, and our land really isn't perfect for doing any kind of agricultural crops other than hay and maple syrup. Unless, of course, you could sell rocks, in which case you do pretty well.
What was that? It was Ripley's you mentioned?
Yeah, Maple Corner Farm is on the Blanford-Granville line. It's been in the Ripley family for, 200 years.
And is that Leon, who you referred to earlier?
Yes, he is the current patriarch of the operation.
Okay, great, thank you.
Margaret's hand was up.
There we go. Yeah, and going along with that too, as Dave had mentioned, I remember back in the day, I grew up in Chester, and you weren't old enough to really work any place. So I remember there were a lot of us in that age group that came up to Blandford to pick blueberries in the summertime. We had a beautiful blueberry farm up here, which is no longer. But, you know, I mean, things like that, that drew younger people. It gave them work. Now I believe Ripley's has pick your own blueberries. I know there's a huge place up in Middlefield that has pick your own blueberries, that type of thing. I don't know if that's something that, you know, maybe some farm would be interested in trying to do again. But again, it's all, you know, it's money and having the land to do it and the people to help the process.
Mhm.
So Margaret, I don't know the guy's name. Just over the Turnpike Bridge, the old farmhouse where the blueberry farm was.
Yes.
Him and Tracy Allen tried revitalizing that, and I thought it went good. He got 10,000 quarts, I think. They burned the field, you know, to get new growth coming up with the low bush berries. And I want to say they sold almost everything to the Mennonites, who made jelly out of it, which might have been the best jelly I've ever tasted in my life. It was really good. Anyway, I don't think they're doing it anymore. I asked Tracy whether or not they're, you know, it's like, dude, that was, you're going to sell that stuff to the Mennonites again so they make jam out of it? And it's like, I got the impression it wasn't profitable enough for them with the amount of labor it took to do it. They're not doing it anymore. It lasted for 1 or 2 years as he tried to get it up and going, and then they don't do it.
It was my understanding that they had what they called wild blueberries, which were low to the ground. It wasn't.
Yeah, those are the.
Yeah,
correct.
it wasn't.
Those are the ones that.
Go ahead.
Those are the ones that were, you know, the hill there would be where the rest area is, and then there's on the house. So they burned that whole hill. Right. And I want to say he got 10,000 quarts off of that hill. Wow. And the Mennonites bought them all. And the fact that they didn't do it again, I'm assuming it wasn't worth the effort they had to put into it to do it.
Okay. But what I was talking about was the higher bush ones, where people could actually go in and pick their own. I know Ripley does very well with that. I know the people up in Middlefield, Peases, I know they do very well with that. Again, it's just, you know, a thought for something that could possibly happen. I mean, like with the ski club, and again, this is me with my wild out there ideas, but I know there are a lot of ski areas where in the summertime they turn those into some kind of a ride down the mountain. You can go on these little, I don't know what they're called, but you can ride down the mountain. So it wouldn't only just be tied to the winter months. Mm-hmm. You could also do something in the summer months.
So the Knox Trail Riders, now it is motorcycles, but a lot of people who live on that street, for the same reason I said earlier, they want to live in the woods. They just want to be alone. Whenever you have these things up there, they're not happy. They don't want them. They don't like them. They complain. And that comes back to the ski area where it wasn't profitable enough for the ski club to make enough money to keep that place going. So now Butternut has bought them. I did talk with the gentleman that runs the place or owns the place. They were going to try to bring that back next year. They put all that money into it last year. I'm not sure why they didn't open this year. I mentioned to them, so that those are called Alpine Slides.
Thank you.
I don't even know how much that would cost to put one in, but then it's not that big of a mountain, so you'd be at the bottom real quick. The one at Mount Tom, they put that one in the summer. They invested all that money, and I don't know that they ever recouped it. There is one at Jiminy Peak that is still open. I discussed with him to try to make it into a mountain bike park in the summer months when they're off of skiing. He said several people have approached him to do that, but you're going to get kickback on the people that live on that street.
Yeah.
So again,
Can we talk, go a little bit into this idea of tourism? Because it sounds like, John, you're saying that people don't want that. But it sounds
people
also
that live
like,
here don't want. They want to be left alone. It's a bedroom community. They don't want any change. To try to grow this community, you're going to get a bunch of people that are going to want to leave because that's not why they moved here. There's nothing here, which is why they moved here. There was nothing that brought them here other than nothing. It's like, that's why I want to live there. There's nothing there. And again, Great Barrington, what a beautiful New England town. Northampton, if you want to get a little artsy-fartsy. Stockbridge, I mean, these are classic New England towns. Dalton, Pittsfield even has its nice areas.
but even Chester, the scale,
Yeah, Chester's dinky, but yeah, there's, they got the theater group. There's a very nice restaurant right there. Carm's reopened. But these were all businesses that were there, 50 years ago or whatever, and they've revitalized them a little bit. But a lot of people don't know this. This area was huge 200 years ago. There was like 3,000 people that lived in, I forget what Bonnie said, if it was Blanford or just the area. We had factories, we had a trolley line, and the forests that everybody sees today, these are brand new forests. This whole place was a field, everything, no trees. That's why you see the stone walls in the middle of the woods. There were no trees. They cut them all down. Huntington and Hart Cafe, when they were there in Huntington, had a bunch of pictures, and they tell you where you are and which direction you're looking. And when you look up on the hills, there's no trees. And they have several of these pictures in the diner. Literally, this whole place didn't have any trees on it. They cut them all down. There was a few here and there, but there were these forests are less than 200 years old. They're all brand new.
And John's right. In 1850, Western Massachusetts was the hog and wool capital of New England, providing most of the wool for the Union Army. But that's long gone. I'm not sure we're going to see trees being cut down for charcoal and a lot of pigs roaming around or sheep. There's just no money in it at this point.
Yeah, you have all the super farms that, all that farming has become a science now. They use satellites. You're just not going to compete with that kind of stuff. They know where to put the fertilizer down by looking at the satellites. The tractors now are almost like jet airplanes with the amount of equipment that's on them and what they can do with it. It's in order to make money, you've got to get it down to a science. You can't just say, I got this couple acres of land and I'm going to grow this crop or raise these animals. It's like, dude, there's these super farms that you're just not going to compete with them. You can't, literally, you can't do it.
John, I just want to take a moment because I saw Joanne's hand up, and I just want to make sure that I get a chance to call on her.
Just
Joanne.
wanted to say that I'm not sure what's going on. I live right next door to the Christmas tree farm on Chester Road, and there has been very little activity there. 2 years ago, I used to watch them all the time, coming in the summertime, cleaning, cutting, whatever they do. That slowed way down. Not this last Christmas, the Christmas before. She closed early. People were wondering what was going on. Just this past Christmas, she wasn't open at all. I don't know if this business is going to be leaving us as well. But it's a very busy place and has been since I've lived up here. So it would be sad to see that go.
Do you
But
think COVID had anything to do with that?
I don't know.
No,
Like I
it
said,
was,
it wasn't just this year. It was last year as well.
Oh,
It was
right. Okay.
last year, but this year it didn't.
it was an elderly couple that ran that, and their kids are not interested in continuing the business.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hobson.
So,
Patty, did you have anything else? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of all the economic development strategies from the last community development plan. I could paste them in the chat, but I don't know if that exercise of going through those right now is going to be worthwhile. And so I guess I want to reflect on a bit of what I'm hearing is sort of, a lot of the rural towns are really constrained in terms of local revenue, so dependent on property taxes, and state monies have declined. So there's this real squeeze on rural communities to try to figure out how to develop their local economies that will help fill those gaps. And so I guess, what I'm hearing a lot is sort of, well, no one wants that in Blanford, and that it wouldn't work. But if we can sort of, I think there might be some possibilities, and it's a matter of trying to find the thing that will work, or maybe suite of things that could work for the town. And it may be, maybe marijuana cultivation. Maybe that's a way to bring revenue into the town that's gonna, and it's often a very unpopular idea, but towns are looking at different things along those lines. There's also looking at carbon sequestration and trying to get in on that equation. The money's being paid for trees and the ability to sequester carbon. So there's a whole kind of suite of possibilities. I don't know exactly what you've been thinking about in Blanford on those, but if you can think about that and maybe what some of the things that have come up in conversation about, what changes might be needed in town to modernize and refine the policies and regulations relating to economic development. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded.
No, that's fine, Patty. And one thing I just want to point out in the chat that I missed earlier, but it actually somewhat connects to that in terms of updating the town's policies, although it's a bit bigger than that, is circling back to the point about the Pike exit and entrance and how that, may benefit or not in terms of the abilities of the town to sustain its economic base. So I wanted to make sure you saw that because I missed it earlier. So Patty, does that kind of relate to, and Margaret also said that she agrees with the Turnpike exit and entrance in terms of how it would help the town continue to sustain itself, or can you elaborate that a little on that, Margaret?
Yeah, I think, we've talked so much about the broadband, bringing the younger people in. But I truly believe that the Turnpike is essential to this too. You have people, as I don't know if it was Dave who mentioned earlier, that are traveling an hour and a half to get back and forth to work. And they're finding that's way too much time on the road. by the time they leave, they have to leave early in the morning, get home late at night. They have families. I really think, I don't think the way the Turnpike entrance exit question was handled was the correct way to handle it. And I really think it's important to this town. Now, if people don't want the Turnpike exit entrance as such, for townspeople, maybe, and I mean, this is, I don't think in this world that we live in now, it's rocket science to have every Blanford residence have some kind of a chip to use that gate on either side to come and go, and it would still be recorded onto their pass somehow. Because I tell you, I have sat there and I see people coming and going in that gate on a regular basis. And it's like, okay, I know you're not state police. I know you're not, say, for example, highway department. I'm just using that for an example. So how are you getting in and out of here where the average Blanford residents cannot?
So Margaret, was that explored in the whole Turnpike exit entrance, that idea of a chip? Because I've heard that before, but I didn't know if that was really part of a,
I don't
a
think it
proposal.
was, but I can't say for sure it wasn't.
So to speak of that, so what that would cost to basically just have it Blanford residents or even surrounding hill towns, that costs tens of millions of dollars to put one of those ramps on, because there's particular, you got to have particular amount of distance to get up to speed. And if you opened it up to other hill towns right here, the 50 cents or whatever you get for every time you get on and off it would never pay for the tens of millions it would cost to put it in. And the majority, because I'm for an exit, the majority of people that in this area who want that exit is they don't want it. Most of the people don't want it. It'll ruin the town. Then you'd have to worry about some of the roads. Another lady was mentioning earlier. Now, 23, I don't have any issues with, but Gore Road, rather thin, not in the best of shape. In fact, the further down you go, the worse it gets. You start getting tractor trailers, the granite trucks, stone trucks, dirt trucks. These roads just aren't going to take it. And this isn't laying down some new tar. This is tearing up the whole road, putting in a new road bed, putting in the proper drainage, which is the biggest problem why our roads are in such rough shape, is that we have no infrastructure for I don't want to call it sewer, but I guess that's what it is. And I don't mean human waste. I mean just the rain. Blanford, just the ground, which is why building Blanford would be so difficult, because you just can't perk it. It's just the way this land is. So the pot farm on Route 23, that's not a huge complex, and they're surrounded by wetlands, and everywhere they've shrunk the parking lot, they've shrunk the sewers, the septic system. There's several places on the plans, and they're already into 3 times they've redesigned this to try to get out of the 100-foot buffer zone. And every time they redesign it, they're less intrusive on it, but they're still in it in a few places.
So John,
John, can I just interject briefly? We only have about 4 more minutes, and I know that Edna had her hand raised as well. So maybe if we could just maybe finish your thought, and then Edna could say her final piece, and then maybe we can start wrapping up, Patty, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, I'll be real quick then, and it's the lay of this land is not conducive for any significant amount of development. It's just, we need a city sewer. You need drainage for the roads. The roads would have to be widened. They'd have to be updated. It's millions and millions of dollars to do this, and it's just cost prohibitive, and it's not going to happen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Let's hear from Edna.
I'm all set. That's fine.
Okay.
The cost of the kiosk, as I remember it, instead of doing the full entrance and exit, was $250,000. So we're not talking millions. Kiosk in each direction. So we're talking 500,000.
Edna, this is not just cars. You're going to be talking about large trucks. It's definitely, look at the amount of tens of thousands they've spent on these studies. That would be great, and I'd love to have my own private entrance on the pike. That'd be great. There's certain rules and regulations with entrances, exits, size. There's just a ton of regulation with it, and I'd be shocked if it was only 250 or 500. Because when they're talking about the major exit, they're talking 10 million.
Sorry, I just spilled all this tea on my keyboard.
If nobody has any other thoughts or anything that they want to add, it's going to be one shortly. I think that we can probably wrap up.
Joanne just put her hand up. I don't know.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Joanne.
Say really briefly, I did not hear the state complain about what it was going to cost. All I heard were people in town complaining about it being here. So, it's the state's problem to get it done. It's our problem to convince people that this town needs it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Joanne.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply the state complained. It's nobody in town wants it.
Thanks, John.
Well, some people do, John.
Yes, I do. I'd love to see it.
All righty. So I think with that, I just want to thank everybody again for their participation and for being here. I think it was a really productive discussion, and I want to thank Ted and Patty for leading the conversation for your particular topics. We are more than happy to share these questions electronically with folks if they know somebody who couldn't make it today. Just let us know that person and send us their contact information, and I will follow up with them. But I think if there's nothing else to add, we are good to break. Okay.
Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Just for those
can
of you,
anybody tell, is the next, I noticed the numbers are exactly the same for phone and ID for the next one at 1 o'clock?
Yep. Yes. So I was just about to say that. I know some of you also received invites to. We have one on resiliency to climate change and sustainability and clean energy. So it's kind of an all-encompassing sustainability meeting at 1 o'clock. It is not heavily attended at this time. So if you're welcome to stay on that if you have thoughts relating to that as well. I know Chief Wheatus is going to be joining us to talk about, to kind of give us some feedback on the emergency management in response to climate change. But anybody else who feels they have something to contribute or learn, or if you have suggestions for who else we could talk to for that meeting, that would be wonderful. So yeah, you're welcome to stay on. I think we'll break for just a moment so Fiona and I can coordinate, and then yeah. All right. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There is some, I won't call it dangerous risk, but there's some risks up here that have been identified, but no real plan to fix them or resiliency plan to avoid them in the future. So I think that part of this plan is going to be key from both police and fire, public safety in general moving forward.
Thanks, Dave, for that note. Yeah, that's very important. I think it was brought to attention yesterday by one of the members in that focus group with regards to, if some sort of natural disaster were to happen, what is the game plan for the town? And I mentioned to the town that to that focus group that every community has a hazard mitigation plan, and there are efforts to review that every 5 years. Mary, you're unmuted, so you should be able to speak.
Thank you. Regarding what Chief Motor said about just thinking in terms of medical issues, there should be, or there may have already been specific training. There's a specific type of stroke that if you are a victim, the sooner you get to a medical facility, the better you are. And there's a certain medical procedure that you must follow. My nephew is a neurologist and educated us to this. And he said, if you have this kind of stroke, you're never going to survive. You can't get to even Noble in time. So we need to do something to maybe up the ante for medical assistance in dire emergencies. And should there be, skipping to another topic, some kind of a natural disaster, I have been speaking for several years about having the town participate in COSTEP so that our records are secure, our town records are secure. Now with the library, all of our collection is documented, not just in the library proper, but it's also online off-site. So I can tell you if, God forbid, it burns down or the tornado wipes it off the face of the map, we know exactly what's missing or what we've lost. And that kind of record retention is something that we need to incorporate into our future tasks about taking care of what we have to take care of in town for record keeping.
That's great, Mary. Yeah. In the meeting yesterday, Shannon Walsh, who was preparing our cultural resources section of the master plan, talked about COSTEP, and Mary's alluding to that, which is an understanding and future planning for these types of documents and records retention. So that definitely would fit in this with regards to town records and making sure that the town has a plan in place on how to maintain those. Okay.
Can I just jump in really
Sure.
quickly? So just so everyone knows, I won't be able to turn my video back on. My computer quit unexpectedly, so I hopped onto my colleagues and changed the name. So I'll still be able to help with hand raising and unmuting and things of that nature, but I will not be able to turn my video back on. Just an FYI. So sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you, Alexis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've been having ongoing conversations with the committee. The visioning session brought some great ideas out. The community survey, as the town will continue to review that. Are there any facility and service goals or ideas that may have not come up yet in the conversation that Blanford should include in this master plan?
Am I still unmuted?
You are.
Okay. We finally achieved a solid financial footing. We have direction, we have compliance, and we need to be sure that that is maintained going forward. And that's a major accomplishment for us.
That's a great note, Mary. That did come up in the survey as well as at the community meeting in one of the breakout rooms. And I think as Chief Motter said, with regards to the town administrator bringing this idea of a capital improvement plan, the master plan will feed into that conversation. So, you know, if there are some investments that the town should be making or identifying, you know, I think this is an opportunity to really identify those types of services that may need some additional investment over time. But you know, with the idea that the town has achieved this financial footing or is put in a better place, I think that it's a great moment. Looks like Joanne sent something in the chat. Positive improvements over the past few years. Yes, and I would agree too. Just in identifying some of the comments that were made in passing. Thank you, Joanne, for that. Anyone else? Okay. Let's see. Okay, this is a tough question because this always comes out when it comes to plans, and maybe it's, you know, this idea that, and I don't know if this is the case for Blandford, but as part of this plan, there will be implementable recommendations that are made that affect governance, town services, and facilities. And knowing that it's difficult sometimes to navigate the capacity of the town and its volunteers to accomplish those goals and strategies, what do you think is needed to move forward with decision making in trying to achieve those? Yeah, so it's a conversation about knowing your internal capacity and knowing the strengths of the people that you have serving on your committees, the people that are volunteering on this this master plan committee, as well as, you know, some of the town officials and town staff. Do you have any ideas to share with regards to ensuring that, you know, good governance is occurring, and you know, that you're maintaining and working towards implementing the master plan? Mary, your hand is up and you are unmuted.
Thank you. We still need to have better communication across all boards. We haven't had an all boards meeting probably due to COVID, but we really need to get all of our boards, commissions, committees together just for a, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're thinking, this is where we want to go. That kind of process. Communication is still lacking, and I think sometimes it may give the appearance of lack of transparency. That's not the case. It's just that our left hand needs to communicate with the right hand all the time. And again, it may be COVID induced, but it's not happening as it had been at one time. I think that's a big thing.
So Mary, on that note, you mentioned you think, you know, COVID has kind of exacerbated that lack of communication. Had it been a previous practice to do this consistently, like at certain intervals? How did that work in terms of having meetings kind of across the board with committees and commissions and boards and whatnot?
At one time, we had what we called all boards meetings, where a representative, if not the chair, came from as many different areas in the town as could possibly participate. Mm-hmm. It was monthly and then quarterly, and then sometimes only for significant happenings like real budget crisis kind of a thing. But those all boards meetings really had a good spot for us all. And if you couldn't get the whole story, it gave you an opportunity to contact somebody after the meeting or later on to see what could you do or how you could maybe interlock. And I think that's missing. Communication is difficult at best.
So who kind of oversaw orchestrating that before?
The select board or the finance committee would say it's time for an all boards meeting, or somebody would suggest to the board, we need to have an all boards meeting, and it would happen.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful background. It looks like Joanne's hand you were waving your hand, right? Okay.
Unmute.
There you go. Oh, did I? Sorry, you're.
Joanne.
There you go.
Let's unmute you, or I think.
Sorry, Joanne, you were unmuted.
All right.
There you go. You're good.
There.
There
I
you
just
go.
wanted to comment on what Mary just said. When I first started working about 3 years ago, that was the first thought I had in my head was, I think I'm in this department all by myself. None of the departments are working together, but I've seen great changes in that. And I think, Mary, exactly what you said, it's COVID that stopped it from moving along, because I saw a lot of progress and a lot of people reaching out and wanting to be a part of the whole picture instead of just one department. That was it. So we can work on that.
Good.
That's great. Yeah, that's important. The all boards meeting is an important tool for towns like yours to really, keep up with things that are happening in town. In my experience, we used all boards meetings for, budget crises, as well as when the town that I previously worked for revamped the entire zoning bylaw, and there were some new responsibilities from the various boards and commissions and staff within town government that needed to be aware of some of the changes. But it's an important tool, and I, that definitely will be explored and put into the plan. Let's see. If you could do one thing to improve Blandford's municipal facilities and infrastructure, what would it be? I think that could also include services. But if they're town government, what one thing, other than probably the most important thing that Mary had suggested, which is communication, what could you do? What could one do to improve that? Or, if there's one aspect of that, what could you do?
Oh boy.
Sing, oh boy. I know that it probably is difficult because, you have town staff on this call, and you have members of the community, especially when it comes to discussing town services in general.
Mhm.
And I think offering the note that the community survey, you'll see from some of those responses, they were not as the community survey didn't hold back. There were comments in there with regards to a lot of different services. Mary, let's unmute you.
Okay. We rely very heavily on Josh. The select board, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, the select board relies very, very heavily on Josh. And they keep, this is my perception, they keep throwing things at him. And he is so good about taking things on. I don't want him to get overloaded. That would be my personal observation and my concern for Josh and for the town. Because if you spread yourself too thin, something might, God forbid, fall through the cracks. We don't want that to happen. So Joanne may have something to say about that. Don't know.
Joanne, do you have anything to add? We'll ask you to unmute. Hold on.
Yes, I agree that Josh is totally overwhelmed, and what they need in that town is a chief financial officer. That's what they need. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Joanne.
Yeah, specifics like that, it's helpful to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so with regards to service delivery, you know, in that community survey, they listed a whole bunch of different services: fire, police, street plowing, maintenance, whatnot. Any comments with regards to the strengths of the services in town of the, and I know I have a couple, I know Mary, and I'm gonna speak for her, even though I'm sure she'll add to it, the strength of the library system and the library. But are there any other services in town that the town can celebrate the strength? Obviously, my follow-up is gonna be, what are the weaknesses? So I don't know if anyone has anything to add. Let's start with Judy first, and then Mary. Hold on. Okay.
Is it working?
It's working.
Okay. I would just like to say that I think the fire department has, and the ambulance service is wonderful. And we've had to use it a few times and they've been terrific. We can't say enough. And they've also been helping out our seniors, which is a wonderful thing. So I would just like to applaud that. And I'm delighted that we have a new police chief. I know she's going to do a great job. And we look forward on the COA working with her too, in cases where it's necessary. So I think those are two really pluses. One of the things that's a problem, I think, and it's COVID related, but sort of, but maybe not, is that if people try to call the town hall for a problem and want answers to something to do with, say, the water department or the planning board or the whatever, it's hard to get a hold of people. And I've been in the building, even when it's not COVID related, where people will come in and ask to talk with somebody and they don't know who to talk to. So, you know, a better communication, I think, with boards and things would be helpful, because even when you call the number, either you find out that the message thing is full, or, you know, and again, Josh or I think Joanne end up solving the problem for these people or attempting to get them in touch with who they need to be in touch with. So I don't know. I know it's partially COVID related, but I think that could be better handled by the town.
Thanks, Judy. That's important. That goes back to the communication aspect and trying to understand where some of the disconnect is. But that's great. Great point. Mary, if you want to go next.
Okay. I think the transfer station is superlative. The only thing that really bothers me is I can't go dump pick anymore. But that's okay. The personnel are marvelous. They're very helpful. What I see with the fire department is the outstanding training effort that goes into what the personnel are able to do and accomplish. And now that we have a full-time police chief, there will be a greater police presence in town. She's 40 hours a week, splitting between Chester and Blanford, and sometimes she has said, depending on what the issues are, it'll be maybe more in Blanford or more in Chester. But I think that's going to be a terrific asset right there.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Anything to add with regards to maybe places of improvement within the town services? Mary?
Sorry. And then
Don't
go to
think
Chief Mater.
Okay.
anything really needs to be improved. I'll have to think on that one.
Okay.
We need a big, we need to expand our library. We do such a terrific job serving the community, and we are in long range planning get up right this minute of multiple phases, and we're now looking into fundraising to promote expansion of the library.
Great. Okay, Chief Mater.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody, for the kind words. As the new person, it's good to hear. The strength of this department can also be a weakness in that I'm the only member that's paid anything in the entire department. Everybody is purely volunteers. I did the numbers. I think it was over 762 hours of training and about an equal amount spent responding to calls. Blanford is, and luckily our surrounding neighbors are a rarity because volunteerism in this country is dying. And when you look at the requirements to be a firefighter, even on a volunteer department, they don't change from career departments. So you don't have the people. I think right now my roster is up to 19. I've added hopefully soon to be 4 people since July. But the problem is a third of them don't live in Blanford. So like the boards and committees and town see, people aren't volunteering, and that's what Blanford's biggest success is, not just in the fire department, but all the boards that are volunteers. That's also going to be a weakness because people are not volunteering. So there needs to be a way to get town members to volunteer for the fire department, volunteer to serve on boards and committees. And I get it, everybody's schedules are full, but that strength is also a weakness. And I know Blanford is not alone in small towns in feeling that pinch.
All right. Thank you, Chief. So we have 4 minutes here. Let me see if, and again, I think as we're going to keep on harping, and maybe some of you will be on the calls tomorrow, there's going to be opportunity to respond to the document that Alexis provided this morning. So if you feel inclined, please fill that out. But maybe just to end our conversation today, before handing it off to Alexis for some closing remarks, I think if, let's see. This is a good one. And maybe, I don't know. Oh, Mary, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, what I was going to suggest under unmet needs,
Great.
we have a really good opportunity, I think, for leveraging a town swimming area with Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. I'm not quite sure how we could leverage that, but there's a great spot right off Route 23. Just cut a hole in the guardrail, put a road in, put some sand in for a beach. Would not have motorization of boats, no motorized boats or anything, but you could have a sailboat, you could row, you could swim. Since we no longer have what I would refer to as a real good access to Russell Pond any longer, I think that would go a long way to making a good thing for the town.
Thank you,
done.
Mary. So, yes. So, Alexis, why don't you close it out?
Sure. So, in addition to just thanking you all for being here, I just want to repeat what Ken said about how I did send out the questions. Don't feel like you would need to respond to them all. If you if you open the document and you see even just one question that we didn't get to today that you wanted to give more thoughts on, please feel free. It is a PDF. If I can send a Word document as well if people can't edit the PDF. But we have 2 more focus groups tomorrow, one on housing and economic development and one on sustainability and climate change resilience. So if either of those topics interest you and you would like to join either of those meetings and you didn't receive an invite, please let me know. You can reply to the email I had sent this morning, and I'll make sure to get you that information so that you have it and the questions for those as well. I've been trying to do it piecemeal just so that I'm not sending like a 30-page document of questions, but I can provide you with the housing and economic development questions, and the climate change questions are a work in progress, but I can send those as well when we have those all set. So just thank you very, very much. And if anything else comes up that you wish you had said or realized after, feel free to let Ken or me know.
Yes, thank you all.
Okay. So, was that a wave or a goodbye?
That was the way.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.